I'm at the top of my game. I'm my father's son. I'm mob guy all the way. Honestly, my dad was grooming me to one day take over the family. I mean, that's what he had. He had aspirations, and he was high enough to be able to make that happen at some point. And I wanted to be the best possible mob guy I could be. That's who I was. All of a sudden, I meet this girl, and my love and attraction for her is becoming more powerful than this love I had for my dad, more powerful than this blood oath that I took. So I always tell people, how do you explain that? Well, 34 years later, I explain it that God put this girl in my life because she came out of nowhere, because he had a different plan and a purpose for me.
I'm sitting here with Michael Franzese. I don't know how to describe you, Michael, except a friend, brother in faith. Welcome to the show.
Good to be back, Eric.
You have a story that's practically unbelievable. So where do we start?
We start off in Brooklyn, New York, where I was born. And my dad, Sonny Franzese, was the underboss of the Colombo crime family, one of the 5 New York La Cosa Nostra families. And so I grew up, with that kind of environment. And my dad was extremely high profile. He was kind of like the John Gotti of his day, always under investigation, major target of law enforcement.
Now, just to be clear, when did you get serious about this? In other words, were you serious about this as a teenager?
Actually, quite the opposite. My dad wanted me out of the life. He actually wanted me to go to school and be a doctor. I was an athlete in school, so I was on that road until he got in some very serious trouble in the 60s. He was indicted 3 times in the state of New York, very serious crimes, grand larceny, homicide. Was acquitted in all those cases. But then in 67, he was indicted in federal court for masterminding a nationwide string of bank robberies. Convicted, sentenced to 50 years in prison. And in 1970, he went off to do his time. And I was a pre-med student, Hofstra University, and I was devastated, Eric. I love my dad. He was like my idol in life. And so Joe Colombo was the boss of our family. He kind of took me under his wing at that time. A lot of my dad's friends were saying, Mike, what are you doing going to school? If you don't help your father out, he's going to die in prison. So how do I help him? With appeals, trying to find the witnesses, trying to get them to recant. But I had to do that on the street. Couldn't do that going to school. So at that point in time, he proposed me for membership. But once I made the decision to go for it, I wanted to be the best possible guy I could be. I wanted to please my dad.
You wanted to be the best gangster you could be.
Yeah.
Now, it's, in some ways it's funny because you think you loved your father, and people need to understand on a human level how people get sucked into different things. Mm-hmm. You loved your father, and you wanted to help your father, and that's what led you into this. And at what point, do you become a made man, and how do you rise in the ranks of the order? In other words, what was your story there?
Well, after I got through this recruit pledge period, which was almost 2 years, I was 22, a little over 22 when my dad proposed me. I'm in this recruit period where I had to prove myself for almost 2 years. And then Halloween night 1975 was 43 years ago this past October. I was walked into a room with 5 other gentlemen, and we took an actual blood oath and became sworn, made members of the family. But when he said it was the first time I heard it. He said, tonight, Michael Franzese, you are born again into a new life, into La Cosa Nostra. Violate what you know about this life, betray your brothers, and you will die and burn in hell like the saint is burning in your hands. That's the oath. He said, do you accept? And I said, yes, I do.
Wow.
And, I took that oath very seriously back then, Eric. I take it seriously now, even though I don't consider myself a member of the life anymore. You're right. When you come into the life, you don't sign a contract. There's no retirement age. You can't say I'm done. They say when you leave that life, you either leave in a coffin or join the government and enter a witness protection program. Obviously, I've done neither.
So you rose in the ranks to become somebody to be reckoned with, and obviously, and I want to ask you about this, to be feared. That's to me the horrifying thing about that life is that the fear. All you have to do is watch a few movies and you get the idea. Were you comfortable in that? Is that just you like a soldier? You just assumed that this is the life, this is the way it goes?
Eric, that's a great question because I often said this. There were times in that life that I had to do things that I was very uncomfortable with. It made me uncomfortable. Because originally, like I said, this wasn't my plan to become a made guy. It happened that way. But I always say, I did them anyway. I mean, I knew that I had to perform in that life, and sometimes you kind of step out of yourself and you do what you have to do.
But you still, I'm imagining, have to fear for your life sometimes.
Well, you can't leave that life. And there was a contract, is the term that's used, on my life right up until, I believe, my former boss died, 2 months ago.
I can't believe this is crazy stuff. So you're making tons of money, and then on the side, you get into movie making.
Yes.
So tell us about that and meeting your wife and the whole story.
Yeah, sometimes you back into things. I kind of backed into getting into the movie business through a friend of mine out in California. I sent him some money. He produced a movie. But I got the movie bug at that point, and I got into the business, and we started producing some films very effectively at that time. And Smokey Robinson approaches me with a script for a breakdance movie, music, dance, rap music back then, all that stuff. So we're producing the movie in Florida. And I bring cast and crew from L.A. to work in the film and 50 professional dancers.
Now, did this ever get made?
Oh, yeah.
What was the title?
It's called Knights of the City.
So you're making this movie, and one of the dancers caught your eye.
Sitting in the hotel by the pool, I had thrown a party for everyone because we were getting ready to start the heavy work, principal photography Monday. Sunday, I throw a big party in the back of the hotel. Beautiful day in Florida. I'm sitting back there minding my own business, Eric, and all of a sudden this gorgeous 20-year-old girl comes out of the water. It was like everything went in slow motion, like a Pepsi commercial. And
wow.
I said, wow, who is this girl? So, make a very long story short, that's been told a number of times. She was a young girl of faith, a young Christian girl. I fell very much in love with her. And next month we'll be celebrating 34 years of marriage.
Wow. Here you are. You're a very powerful mobster. You see this beautiful 20-year-old girl. You don't have any clue about her serious faith in Jesus. And you begin to pursue her.
Yes.
And so tell us about that.
I pursue her, and she doesn't want anything to do with me.
Why?
I don't know. She thought I was too old for her. I was the producer. She was 20. I was 31. But what I noticed, Eric, we used to hang out with some of the cast. We used to go to some of the clubs. She would never show up. She was one or two friends, did her rehearsal, back to the room. That was it. Always kept to herself. So one night I cornered her. We were coming out of a cast meeting, and I said, why don't you, I'm trying to take you out to lunch. You say yes, but you don't show up. You don't hang out with anybody. Long story short, she says, I'm a girl of faith, or I'm a believer, or Christian. I forget how she put it. I said, well, I'm Catholic. We got something in common. Let's talk. I was trying to break the ice. So we started to get to know each other a bit on the set. And I wasn't buying into her faith at that point, but I was really starting to take a liking to her. We wrapped the movie, and she says, you got to come home and meet my mother. She's very close to her mom, right? I said, hey, no problem. She was from Anaheim, California. We jump on a plane. We go meet her mom. Eric, her mom, Irma, was the most godly woman I ever met in my life. If you meet Irma for 2 minutes, your name goes in her prayer book. She had a prayer book like a telephone book. I'm not kidding. And there was no shame in her game at all. She would talk to me as if Jesus was standing next to us. So I'm getting like a spooky feeling with these two. I said, what's up here? But here's what's really happening. I'm starting to fall in love with this girl. And I saw that her and her mom were very serious about their faith. I mean, they put it right out there. And I said, how is this going to work? I'm a direct contradiction to everything these two women believe. And they didn't know about my life. They saw The Godfather once. They didn't know anything. I'm a New York guy.
How is it possible for one of the top figures in the New York mafia to make accommodations that would allow him to be with a woman like this?
Well, there really was no rhyme or reason to what I was doing, because I don't know of anybody that's ever walked away from that life, not entered a program, and publicly lived to talk about it as I have. So, the fascinating thing to me, Eric, when I look back and I kind of see the path that God navigated for me, when I meet this girl, I'm at the top of my game. I'm my father's son. I'm mob guy all the way. Honestly, my dad was grooming me to one day take over the family. I mean, that's what he had. He had aspirations, and he was high enough to be able to make that happen at some point. And I wanted to be the best possible mob guy I could be. That's who I was. All of a sudden, I meet this girl, and my love and attraction for her is becoming more powerful than this love I had for my dad, more powerful than this blood oath that I took. So I always tell people, how do you explain that? Well, 34 years later, I explain it that God put this girl in my life because she came out of nowhere, because he had a different plan and a purpose for me. But now I have to figure out how to get away from that life. Not easy. So I always had a plan. I devised a plan to try to never to, just walk away where maybe they'd forget about me. That's all it was. Move out to California. They were indicting me on another big case. I had been indicted so many times. Giuliani indicted me, everybody. And I beat all of those cases. So I figure now I'll take a plea. They were indicting me on this gasoline tax thing, another racketeering thing. But I kept beating the government, so I had leverage with them. So I told my lawyer, let's negotiate. I'll take a plea. I'll do a couple of years in prison. I'll give him some money. I'll marry Camille, move out to the West Coast, get out of jail. Maybe after 10 or 12 years, the mob guys will forget about me. That was my plan. It had nothing to do with God at that point. I just was in love with a beautiful woman. That was it.
So it works out that you get this plea and you go to prison.
Yes. So I'm back in prison. I do 5 years. We get through that 5-year stretch. I get out on parole. Eric, worst 13 months of my life. I mean...
Now, wait a minute. You're in 5 years.
Did 5 years, right.
And your future wife is waiting for you, or what?
We had one little baby at that point, and she waited for me for that 5 years. We're out on parole 13 months.
But so she did marry you.
Oh, yeah.
It's an amazing thing, that a woman who is that serious about her Christian faith would marry you, that she must have seen the future in a way, that she could see who you really were and who you were becoming, because otherwise, obviously, that wasn't going to work. And so for 5 years, you're in there, and now you get out and you say that the 13 months on parole were bad. What happened?
Well, I'm literally dodging bullets. I mean, the FBI is coming to me, whether they like you or not. If they get word from their informants that your life is in danger, they have to tell you. So they come to me, they say, Franzese, there's guys here from New York out to hurt you. If you don't leave town, you're going to be dead by the weekend. So I have to pick my family up. We have to move.
So they were trying to kill you.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I knew they were going to make an attempt. There was no doubt. And like a fool, and I will admit, a total fool, I fall into a trap and I violate my parole. And they locked me up again. And they told my wife I'd never see the street again. They were going to indict me on another racketeering case. She almost had a breakdown on me at that point. She said, here I go, again. They told me I was going to die in prison, basically. They're going to put me away for life. Violated my parole, indicted me on another racketeering case. It was a mess. And they throw me in that 6x8 cell. And Eric, I'll be honest with you. I mean, it was the worst night of my life. I mean, I tell everybody, I've experienced every emotion from ecstasy right down to grief, everything in between, but by far, hopelessness is the worst emotion you can feel. I'm laying on that cot, and like I said, just wanted to close my eyes and not wake up. A prison guard walked by my cell. He looked in on me. He said, Franzese, you don't look good. You okay? I said, get away from me, man. I chased him. I don't want to see anybody. And he left. And he comes back maybe a minute later. He pushes something through the slot on a door. It falls on the floor. I heard a thump. It was a Bible. And I'll be honest with you, I was so angry or whatever the word is. I jumped off the cot, picked up the Bible, slammed it against that cinder block wall as hard as I could. It was like, that was it. And then, it took me about a minute. I said, you know what? Only me and God in this cell. I believed in God. I said, I don't need another enemy. I got nothing but enemies. I pick up the book. And I looked up, Eric, for the first time in my life at that cement ceiling, and I said, God, if you're up there, you got to give me something to make me feel better. I can't deal with this. I'm holding the book. I didn't know how to read the Bible, catechism in Catholic school, right? And it falls open to the book of Proverbs. And I came to a verse that kind of just stopped me cold, and was Proverbs 16:7, which says, when a man's ways are pleasing to the Lord, even his enemies are at peace with him. Now, the enemies part got me because I had nothing but enemies. And then I kind of moved back and I was convicted. When a man's ways are pleasing to the Lord, well, that certainly wasn't me. And it was almost as if the Spirit said to me, if you'd have been pleasing to me, I'd take care of your enemies. That's how I interpreted the verse. I started to read on a little bit more, and I came to a verse that's really become the verse of my life. And it's Proverbs chapter 3, verses 5 and 6. Trust in the Lord with all your heart. Lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he will make your path straight. And Eric, when I read that verse, my first inclination, I challenged God. I said, God, I trusted my father. I took a blood oath. Look where it got me. I did it twice. Can't do it again. If you really are God, prove it to me. I'll tell you what happens. The racketeering case they were going to put on me, it fell apart. Couldn't indict me, but they gave me 4 years, the maximum on a parole violation. I spent 35 more months and 13 days in prison, 29 months and 7 days in that hole. 6x8 cell, 24/7, me and God. And Eric, that's not easy. But I dove into my Bible. Dove into it. I mean, every day. If you see my prison Bible, more on my notes than Scripture. I came out of there believing with all my heart that the Bible was God's word and that Jesus was my risen Savior. And he took it from there. I don't claim any credit for anything that I'm doing now because I had no clue what I was going to do.
But how do you get out of that and not get killed? I mean, I just have to believe that when you take that oath, that is so serious. So, okay, you're in there almost another 3 years, but there's still, they have to be after you. What do you do at this point?
You know, Eric, it's true. You know, I don't know of anybody that's able to walk away publicly like I have and live to tell about it. But, you know, I believe there's two reasons for that. Obviously, there's a spiritual reason in that God had a different plan and a purpose for my life. It's obvious. But, you know, the practical reason for that is God never throws us into the fire without preparing us. And I spent 20 years in that life, 20 plus, at a very high level. I knew the mentality of the guys. I knew what they would do, what they wouldn't do. So I was prepared as best I could to try to counteract any move that they would make.
Right.
So I moved out to California, changed my whole lifestyle. And I had a couple of close calls, but I think God interjected at that point. But I just outlasted everybody. I mean, everybody I know in that life is either dead or in prison for the rest of their life. And then I'm here. I mean, everybody predicted my death when I walked out in 95. Everybody. 5 guys that I walked into the room with Halloween night, we all got made. They're all dead. Every one of them murdered. Not one of them died of natural causes. So, I mean, it's obvious God had a different plan and a purpose for my life, and he helped me execute it. It's all him.
Now, what are you working on now?
Well, I'm excited. Just so happens that a documentary feature film was produced on me back in 2014. It was a theatrical release, did very well, and then we started showing it in churches throughout the country, and we held it off on DVD until now.
Yeah.
It's coming out soon on DVD. Let me show you the DVD.
Yeah.
Called God the Father, From Godfather to God the Father. And this is my journey. This is, and my whole family's, and it was very well done. And it's from mob guy to the Lord.
And is that a book?
And then there's a book, God the Father.
God the Father. All right.
And, you know, this is really a ministry tool. Anybody that's really struggling needs encouragement. I have like 10,000 of these in prisons all over the country. This is the book that really, I think, hopefully will be encouragement and hope for everybody. That's this one.
Now, your wife has written a book.
Well, here's the story here. I tell the guys at my men's things that I do, I said, listen, get this book, take it home for your wife, and she's going to say, man, you know, after reading about that guy, you must be a saint. So it's going to put you in good, you know, ingratiate you with your wife. But she really put her heart into
I love the title, This Thing of Ours, which of course is La Cosa Nostra.
La Cosa Nostra.
That is, but she's referring to your marriage.
That's correct. And she did a great job, and women have been so encouraged by it. So we've been so blessed, Eric. So blessed.
Unbelievable. Now, folks, I hope you will share this with your friends. This is an amazing. This is a miracle story. This is, to my mind, proof that God is real and that he can reach anybody. He can get to you if he wants to. Michael Franzese, thank you, my friend.
Thanks for having me, Eric.